Okay, yesterday, as we were finishing up, we were talking about evidence of the endosymbiont theory. So we're just going to review that a little bit. We said that some of the evidence was that one, mitochondria and chloroplasts have their own DNA. That DNA was circular like prokaryotes. They also have ribosomes, okay? They also have ribosomes just like the prokaryotes did. And finally, they reproduce by binary fission, all right? So that was all pieces of evidence. And the biggest piece that we found was that the mitochondria and the chloroplasts have their own DNA. Okay? Now, today we're going to switch up a little bit, and we're going to talk about an individual named Charles Darwin. Okay? Charles Darwin. And Mr. Darwin was on the Beagle. Okay? Not a dog, it was a ship. Okay? So Mr. Darwin was on the Beagle. 1831. He was on a mission to help survey the coast of South America. Okay? Mr. Darwin here was a naturalist. He wasn't actually doing the survey. He was just along for the ride. That was the mission, to try to survey the coast of South America. This was an English ship, okay? It was an English ship. So they sailed all the way around the bottom part of South America. Okay, Mr. Darwin was a naturalist. He collected documents. He had samples like fossils, rocks, plants, and animals. He made detailed notes about things that he saw on his voyage. Okay, but he was a naturalist, just writing down parts of nature that he saw. Now, he came upon a place that is called the Galapagos Islands. Okay? Now, if you look at this, here is South America. Okay? Colombia, Peru, Ecuador. Okay? Right off the coast of South America were these islands right here called the Galapagos Islands. Okay? Now, hopefully, we will get to have a presentation later on, maybe next week. It was supposed to be tomorrow, but it got canceled due to the assembly we have tomorrow. So hopefully we have a Galapagos Island presentation coming up here next week. You know, if it does, if it falls through, that's too bad because it's really, really pretty interesting. Now, what Darwin noticed was that the different islands had different varieties of the same animals. And one of the biggest things that Darwin is known for is finches. Anybody know what a finch is? It's a bird, okay? A finch is a bird. Darwin was known, and sometimes we actually refer to those as Darwin's finches. Darwin was known for these birds, these finches. And he noticed that the finches were somewhat similar other than their beaks. Their beaks were different. If it was on a different island, it had a different beak. Okay? So he started collecting and observing the different birds from the island. He observed the different birds from the island, and he found that all were similar to birds from the mainland, to birds from South America. All of these species were similar, but they were new species. They had different versions of the beak. So all new species with similarities to the birds that were on the mainland. Okay? Now, Darwin's hypothesis. What Darwin ended up saying is that new species could appear through small changes in ancestor species. These new species could appear from ancestor species. And that leads us to talk a little bit about artificial selection. Okay? Artificial selection. I don't remember. Let's look at our terms real quick. Was artificial selective breeding was one of our terms. Turn to that page, your genetic engineering page. Look at selective breeding. Okay, flip it up. What did you have there?
Two organisms to serve as parents of the next generation.
We select two organisms to serve as parents of the next generation. Okay, that's right here. Selective breeding. All right, now let's talk about selective breeding. All right, how many people have ever heard of the Clydesdales? Okay, what are the Clydesdales? What are they, Jamie? They're horses. What do you think they're known for? Their strength. They're big, they're strong. Okay? If you're having racehorses, do you want a Clydesdale? Nah, because he's going to lose, isn't he? If you are pulling plows through a field, do you want a Clydesdale? Absolutely. Okay? So those are bred for strength. Now, does it make sense that you take the strongest male Clydesdale and the strongest female Clydesdale and match them up? Do you think you'd get a pretty strong horse? Okay? That's what we're talking about here. Selective breeding. Okay? What about dogs? Okay? What's a breed of a dog that's pretty useful for something? Can anybody think of it? Jonathan? A German Shepherd. Where do we see German Shepherds a lot? Okay. What did you say? Military? Is that what you said? Okay. They're pretty good at sniffing stuff out, right? Okay. What about drug dogs? Okay. When we have the dog come through the school here, what is it? Okay. Usually a German Shepherd, right? Okay. Usually a German Shepherd. So they're pretty good at sniffing things out. Do you think if we took the best female sniffer and the best male sniffer, we'd have a pretty good sniffer? Yeah. Okay? Yeah. I'd want a pretty good sniffer if I'm in the military and I'm walking through a field that might have bombs in it, right? Absolutely I would. Okay? Have you ever heard of a Labradoodle? What are they bred for? That's a poodle and a lab. They don't shed. They don't shed. I've got a lab German Shepherd mutt mix at my house. Sheds like crazy. Okay? Sheds like crazy. Labradoodle, mixing that poodle with that lab, they don't shed. All right, they don't shed. That is selective breeding here, folks. So, this artificial selection is part of Darwin's hypothesis. Okay? Example here, we talked about dogs. What about pigeons? What about pigeons? What are pigeons used for back in the olden days? Delivered messages, right? So if I had a pigeon that could fly farther, would that be better? Yeah. So here we go. I put these dogs on here. What is that, a Mastiff? Big, strong dog. A Bulldog is aggressive, quick, okay? A Bull Mastiff has different traits of both dogs. Big and strong, fast and aggressive. So we get kind of the best of both worlds by selecting that breed, okay? By selecting that. Now, natural selection. Natural selection. A man named Thomas Malthus was studying, and he thought that human population would eventually outgrow the food supply. So basically he said that we would have more people than we would have resources to feed them. So, Malthus thought that there would be a competition for food. Okay? Not enough food around, so we were going to have to start competing for food. He said that the less equipped individuals would die. Now stop and think. If you're out in the jungle, okay? If you're out in the jungle and you're with Simba in The Pride on the Lion King, and you're chasing around wildebeest, right? Isn't that what they ate? Okay? You're chasing those guys around. If you're not fast enough to catch them, are you going to eat a whole lot? So, the faster lions, according to Malthus, the faster lions were better equipped because they could catch the wildebeest. The slower lions couldn't. So he said that those less equipped, those slower lions, would eventually starve. Wouldn't have anything to eat. Okay? That makes sense. Doesn't that theory make sense? Okay? He had a book, okay? An essay on the principle of population. Thomas Malthus right there. Okay? Now, at the same time, it was kind of like a race. Malthus and Darwin, okay? Malthus and Darwin each were having some thoughts. And Darwin had these 4 parts of his theory of natural selection. Okay? Darwin had these 4 parts. He said, individuals in a population show variation. Okay? Do you think we have variation in our population of this room? Yeah. My picture here. Look at these. What are those? Cocker Spaniels? Is that what those are? A little bit of variation in those Cocker Spaniels, right? They're all Cocker Spaniels, but one's brown, 2 of them are white, brown face, brown and black and white face, all different variations. So, individuals in a population have variations. He says these variations can be inherited. Okay? These variations can be inherited. Now on my picture here, this is just one I thought was interesting, the Obamas. Okay? Look at the Obamas here. Look at their daughters. Did they inherit traits? Okay? That nose right there looks to me like Dad's nose right there. Okay? So, are they inheriting traits from their parents? Absolutely. We talked about this. 23 from mom, 23 from dad, passing on the traits to the next generation, right? So, variations can be inherited. He also said that organisms produce more offspring than can survive on the available resources. They can produce more offspring than can survive. I've got a picture. Look at all these turtles. Okay? Look at all these turtles. What do you know about turtles? You know anything? What's the biggest part of a turtle's survival? Trying to get to the water from the nest, right? Because what happens to them? Birds will swoop down and eat them up. Okay? So, organisms produce more offspring than can survive. Finally, Darwin's fourth part says that variations that increase reproductive success have a greater chance of being passed on. Okay? So, these traits, these variations that increase the reproductive success have greater chances of being passed on. Now, what does that mean? Okay, what does that mean? Well, we talked about the fast lion. What happened to the slow lion? Huh? It died off and it starved. So what lion was reproducing? The fast one, right? So now all of a sudden, we're seeing faster and faster lions. Okay? So that is an example of that reproductive success. Okay? The faster lions are passing on their genes. The slower ones are dying off. So their genes aren't moving on. Okay? Look right here. We'll talk more about this later. The peppered moths. Okay? I don't know. Can you see the other one? Okay? He's right here. He's right here. Who do you think the bird's going to see easier? That one or the dark moth? The peppered one or the darker one? Yeah, that bird's going to see that darker one. Might not even see that moth right there, huh? So what do you think? What traits are being passed on with those? Okay. The darker moths are going to be living, right? The darker moths are going to live. What will happen to the lighter ones? They'll get ate up by the birds, right? Okay. We'll do a little bit with this tomorrow, I believe, with peppered moths. Now let's talk a little bit of some other types of selection. Okay? The first type is stabilizing selection. It's a common form of natural selection. It's where average traits have a better chance of survival. Average traits have a better chance of survival. What is an example of this? And you probably don't need to write all of that down. Okay? Did I leave you a line for example in your notes? Okay? If I were you, I would probably just write down the example of being human birth weight. Okay? Human birth weight. It says, babies with below normal and above normal birth rates have lower chances of survival than babies born with the average weight. Okay? So over many, many years, okay, if you look, the blue right here, which is the bar graph, is the percent of births in the population, okay? The red is the percent of infant mortality. Well, where is the least amount of infant mortality? Right in here, right? Where is the greatest percentage of birth weights? Right in here, right? So, with that being said, okay, the average birth weight has a greater chance of survival than the other ends, the above normal and the below normal birth weights. Okay? Directional selection. Directional selection. Allele frequency moves in a certain direction. Allele frequency moves in a certain direction. An example of that we just talked about, peppered moths, right? Which allele was the good one of the ones that we saw? The darker one, right? Do you think it would be better being the darker moth if we had white bark trees? No, it wouldn't. Okay? It wouldn't. So right there, look, here's an example. Here's a lighter bark tree. Which one can you see easier? The dark one. Here's a darker bark tree. Which one can you see easier? The light one. So that's directional selection. The frequencies move in certain directions based on certain parts of the environment. Disruptive selection eliminates the average trait. There's nothing in the middle. And what I mean by that is, here's the dark mouse, here's the light mouse. You're not really going to have the tan mouse. You're either going to be the dark brown mouse, or you're going to be the light brown mouse. Nothing in the middle. Okay? So disruptive selection is one where the average trait is eliminated. The final one we're going to talk about is sexual selection. And that is where sexes vary different phenotypes. Okay? Sexes vary different phenotypes. An example are peacocks and peahens. What do you know about the peacock? Yeah, these feathers. Okay? The more feathers, the brighter the bird, the better, right? Look at that color of that guy. Are people going to notice? Okay? Yeah. That's what he wants noticed. He wants everybody to see all of the feathers that he has. Okay? So there's definitely different phenotypes in the sexes. And birds are a lot like that. Think about the birds that are around here. Okay? Think about ducks. Have you ever seen mallards? What can you tell me about a mallard? What's got a green head? The male. What's kind of a dark brownish color? The female. Okay? Have you ever seen a male cardinal versus a female cardinal? What can you tell me about it? The male's a really, really red color. About the female? like a tannish gray color. So are there different phenotypes in the sexes? Absolutely. Okay, absolutely. That's this sexual selection there. Okay. I think that's my last slide. Yep. Now,